The hits just keep on coming for Bud Light. And I'm not talking about the classic hits, unforgettable songs like When a Man Becomes a Woman by Michelle Bolton, or the chart-topping classic from Ricky Spears, Remove My Dong One More Time. No. The musical medleys, they are meant for celebration. They are not playing in the corporate offices of Anheuser-Busch today. There is simply no reason to celebrate. As discussed earlier this week, 2023 has been the year of the huge embarrassing failure. And outside of Bomani Jones, who is struggling to hold on to his undefeated streak and his crown, outside of Bomani Jones, there has not been a bigger failure in 2023 than Bud Light. Over the last 4 months, Bud Light, they have stepped into the ring with the Bobo, and they have been hitting him with rabbit punches. A jab here, a jab there, a billion lost here, a billion lost there. Cases of Bud Light, they have collected so much dust, it could be used to build a neighborhood of huts in Ethiopia. Yesterday, Bud Light, they landed what could possibly be a knockout punch on Bomani Jones. I'm not going to lie to you. For the first time ever, Bomani Jones is at serious risk of losing his undefeated streak and the title of huge embarrassing failure. Now, of course, you guys will ultimately be the ones deciding that later on this year if Bomani Jones is no longer the biggest huge embarrassing failure and Bud Light can beat him out. But a couple of months ago, Bud Light CEO Brendan Whitworth, he outlined this brilliant strategy to save his dying brand. One of the steps outlined in this brilliant plan was for Brendan Whitworth to tour the country, trying to convince normal people to give Bud Light another chance. Needless to say, this portion of the plan ended in failure. I mean, seriously. Who wants to speak with some doofus CEO at a Major League Baseball game? Bottom of the ninth, Shohei Ohtani at the plate. Oh, Brendan Whitworth slides into third with an aggressive handshake. If I remember correctly, Brendan Whitworth, he had a 4-step plan to save the company. Now, I don't remember the other 2 steps, but I know one of his promises was doing everything in his power to prevent layoffs. Brendan Whitworth claimed that we are going to save jobs. He sounded just like a politician. Anytime a politician claims that they can create jobs or save jobs, it means we are headed for a recession. 90% of politicians in Washington, they've never had a real job, much less know how to create one. They are experts at destroying jobs. They are experts at crippling industries. I mean, me personally, I have never been hired by a politician. We are a couple of months into this brilliant plan from Bud Light. As expected, they have not been able to stop the bleeding. The most recent sales figures show that sales of Bud Light were down around 27%. I guess that's a good thing? For a while, sales were declining by almost 30%. It looks like a few more people bought Bud Light recently to use the cans for target practice. Earlier this week, Brendan Whitworth, he announced that Bud Light was forced to lay off hundreds of employees. Wait a minute. Step 1 of your plan was to prevent layoffs. If you can't get through step 1 of your plan successfully, why would anyone believe you can implement the rest of it? Over the last 4 months, I have done nothing but criticize Bud Light and Brendan Whitworth. They have made a series of decisions since April, and not one time have they made the right decision. But I am going to give Brendan Whitworth a little bit of credit here with these layoffs, because from what I can tell, he didn't lay off factory workers. He didn't let go of drivers or people wearing a blue collar in general. According to Fox Business, all of the employees that were laid off at Bud Light were in corporate and marketing positions. I would assume some of these people were responsible for Bud Light entering into holy matrimony with Bob Dylan Mulvaney. I would hope that the main person responsible for this marriage, Alyssa Heine, I hope she was included in these layoffs. I have been unable to confirm that. Some sources claim that she is on leave, also known as paid vacation. Other sources are saying Alyssa Heine is sitting in the unemployment line. Since she is so infatuated with Bobby D, maybe they will run into each other there and they can get married. But that is all the credit I am going to give Brendan Whitworth. A couple of months ago, he promised to financially support his third-party brewers and distributors. He admitted that this disaster with Dylan Mulvaney should not affect brewers and distributors, most of which are family-owned businesses. I know for a fact that the Bud Light distributor where I live is a small family-owned business. Haven't rode by their location in a while to see if they're still in business. If they are, I doubt they will be for very long. Last month, a Bud Light distributor in the Carolinas was forced to let go of hundreds of employees. This week, one of their brewers in Virginia forced to do the same thing. Where is all the money that Brendan Whitworth promised? Where is all of this financial support that was supposed to be given to these workers, many of which live in small towns where employment opportunities are scarce? Maybe, just maybe, Bud Light doesn't have enough discretionary income to support them. Their stock price down 12% and showing no signs of going back up. Sales in 2023 are down almost 30%. Bud Light went from the most popular beer in America to barely making the top 15. Once football season starts, I expect Bud Light to fall out of the top 15 altogether. I know Brendan Whitworth thinks they can weather the storm. I know he thinks these are just headwinds and people will eventually forgive and forget. But at this point, that level of thinking is delusional. Look, I don't think Bud Light is at risk of going out of business, but their days of dominating the market here in America, those days are over. This boycott is not a fad. It's not some trend that will eventually subside. Hell, I don't even consider this to be a boycott anymore. People have now changed their habits. Depending on who you believe, it can take anywhere from 1 to 8 months for a habit to be broken. Let's just split the difference here and say the average person can successfully break a habit in about 4 months, which is exactly how long this boycott of Bud Light has lasted, and is showing no signs of slowing down. The one thing that has been consistent over the last 4 months is Bud Light's decline in sales. Every week, sales have declined between 25 and 30%. When media outlets report these sales declines, they are comparing Bud Light sales to the same week last year. So what this tells me, the people who used to drink Bud Light, they have successfully broken their habit. Like I said, this is not a boycott anymore. This has become business as usual. Although Bud Light is struggling to find reasons to celebrate their former partner and their short-lived marriage, they have found plenty of reasons to celebrate. Yesterday was a monumental day in the life of Dylan Mulvaney. Bobby D traveled over to Paris to celebrate this special event, because it's far too dangerous to celebrate here in America for Dylan Mulvaney. Yesterday marked the 500th day of Dylan Mulvaney becoming a woman. Now, I'll pause here for a second so you can gather your emotions. To celebrate 500 days of womanhood, Dylan Mulvaney went on something that they're calling a girls' trip. My inside sources tell me all the beautiful woke women were there. The eloquent Leah Thomas, the beautiful, the mesmerizing Rachel Levine. Oh, Rachel Levine, I hope Rach was wearing a bikini. I don't know if bikinis were involved, hopefully not, but my sources tell me there were plenty of tuck-friendly bathing suits. Gillette donated cases of Mach 3 razors to eliminate those pesky facial whiskers. There were also plenty of complimentary cucumbers for all the girls to enjoy. Tag team wrestling at its finest. Dylan Mulvaney took a break from all the partying to deliver a 7-minute message to confused teens and lonely men. During this soliloquy, Dylan offered free advice to all the men who aspire to be women. I must really like and appreciate you guys, because I had to watch this 7-minute clip 3 or 4 times to determine the footage I wanted to share with you. I put together a compilation of some of the best advice given by Dylan Mulvaney. If you're a man looking to become a former man, I encourage you to pay close attention. You can't get advice like this anywhere else. Watch for yourself.
Hi, today would be day 500 of being a girl if I was still keeping up with that series. On day 408, I learned who my true loved ones are. I had a lot of people come into my life over the last year, but it's fascinating to actually see who goes quiet and who stands up. But you know who came through for me these last few months? It was trans people and queer people, a lot of which saw all of this coming because they knew what it was like to be burned, and I didn't. And it's like when your friend is in a bad relationship and you wait for them to see the light and then they come running back to you. Well, that was the queer community for me. You know, I gave myself and my identity to people who didn't deserve it. And then the trans and queer community was there to pick me back up without pity. And thank God for that. And thank God for them. Thank you. But I'm also seeing my relationships with women in my life change in really beautiful ways. And the way that straight men interact with me as I become more passing is just fascinating too. Like, I had to come out to a guy last weekend at the club, and he had no idea I was trans. It was so terrifying for me, but he ended up being so lovely about it, and it made me, you know, have a lot of confidence, and I was looking good. I learned through an online poll that 50% of Americans like me. And that felt like a Black Mirror episode, because when do non-politicians get polled like that? And I do wish that it was 51%, but I also would like to know, what exactly are we voting on?
Couple of things here. Number one, Dylan Mulvaney claims to have been burned over the last 4 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. In this marriage between Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney, wasn't Bud Light the one that was burned? This kind of reminds me of a classic American divorce between a man and a woman. Bud Light playing the role of the man losing all their money, being forced to forfeit their assets. Dylan Mulvaney playing the role of the woman, traveling the world, partying, perfecting their status as the ultimate victim. Dylan Mulvaney also took a subtle jab at Bud Light by claiming that they refused to take a stand. Well, no shit. Their business is crumbling. They are losing billions of dollars. Why would they stand with you? Of course, this is complete bullshit, because Bud Light did take a stand. They took a silent stand. Brendan Whitworth, he refused to admit that partnering with Dylan Mulvaney was a mistake. Just last month, Bud Light spent hundreds of thousands of dollars sponsoring pride parades across America and Canada. The final part of the clip, though, was what I found to be the most interesting. Dylan Mulvaney references a poll. The poll obviously wasn't revealed, likely because it was conducted on Dylan Mulvaney's Instagram page, so the results were heavily skewed in Bobby D's favor. According to this poll, 50% of Americans admit to liking Dylan Mulvaney. If this were true, then someone please explain to me how Bud Light lost billions of dollars by partnering with Dylan Mulvaney. Look, I have got nothing against Dylan Mulvaney personally. I think Dylan is far less dangerous than someone like Rachel Levine, who's working in the federal government and trying to push gender-affirming care and puberty blockers onto kids. The problem I have with Dylan Mulvaney is their influence over America's youth. Kids see Dylan Mulvaney living this luxurious lifestyle. They see the fame, the fortune. I'm sure some of these kids think, all I have to do is remove my rice and beans and I can become rich and famous too. Look, Dylan Mulvaney has no control over audience demographics, but you do have a responsibility when you have a younger audience. That is my biggest problem with Dylan Mulvaney, the lack of responsibility. And also the fact that I think Dylan Mulvaney mocks women. Anyway, this Bud Light boycott not going away. I highly doubt we see major brands partnering with Dylan Mulvaney anytime soon, but what do you think? Will Bud Light eventually be able to recover? Or could we see another round of layoffs before the end of the year? Do you think Dylan Mulvaney will continue to see endorsement deals? Also, let me know what your problem is with Dylan Mulvaney. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. You guys know the drill. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84, and I'll see you tomorrow.